it was very disruptive. I think it is going to be a difference maker in how we do our jobs, not just from a content point of view, but also workflow, which I think is being overlooked right now, but we'll eventually get to in a big way.
In the world of technology, heroes are everywhere. They're overcoming disruption, delivering sustainable outcomes, and fearlessly forging the future to solve what's next. Join me, Ed McNamara, as we meet the people and businesses driving change in our constantly disruptive world. This is Innovation Heroes, a podcast brought to you by SHI. Every day, we hear about another groundbreaking development in the world of generative AI, promising to turn entire industries upside down and maybe make yet another human career obsolete. But that's not exactly how our next guest sees it. Greg Matusky is president and founder of GregoryFCA, an award-winning public relations firm that's been around for more than 3 decades. Greg isn't just happy to see AI making headlines. He's been getting ready for it for the last 3 years, and he couldn't be more excited about the future of his craft. I've had the pleasure of working directly with Greg for years. SHI is one of his clients, so I was definitely intrigued when I saw Greg posting about Gen AI on LinkedIn and what he had to say about it. From creating in-house tools and processes that take advantage of all these new tools to launching an amazing and free press release writing app, GregoryFCA is already positioning itself as a leader in AI-powered public relations. I couldn't be more excited to be speaking with Greg to learn all about this fascinating journey. Greg Matusky, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me, Ed. I'm excited to talk about generative AI. So you ask the questions, and I will answer them from our studios here outside of Philadelphia.
Well, and thank you for sitting there patiently while I said a bunch of nice things about you, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, I didn't know who you were talking about there for a little, and then I kind of pieced it together. So.
I hear it's not easy. One day maybe I'll experience that myself. But before we dive into AI, tell us a little bit about the history of GregoryFCA. You weren't always an AI-powered firm, because nobody was. So just give us a little bit of your history and how we got here.
Sure, Ed. It goes way back to the 1980s. I was a writer for business magazines. I was a contributing editor for Success Magazine. My work appeared in Inc. and Forbes Magazine. And then 1990, I transformed myself and did PR because writing was pretty difficult, which we'll talk about here in a second. And I wanted to be more involved with people than just my own mind and thoughts. And so for the next foreseeable future, I worked hard to help other people learn to write, and that was very frustrating. Writing is that which is just beyond most of us, and even good writers struggle to write well, to write in a way that meets expectation. And I'd always give seminars and webinars, and I'd try to make them energetic and fun, and everyone would enjoy them, and then we'd get back together, and someone would say, but I still can't write well. So about 3 years ago, through this mission, I was approached by somebody who challenged me and said, I bet you I can digitize the writing process that you use. And I said, I bet you can't. And so we started this long progression where we, in an analog world, where we came up with different kinds of content and all the questions that we asked behind it. Little did we know we were writing prompts even back then. And we put them in a database. And then in December of 2022, a miracle happened. The fourth wave of technology that I've seen, which started with the laptop computer and then the internet and then smartphones and now generative AI. And I saw the first news release written by a generative AI engine. And Ed, I giggled when it appeared on my screen because I really believed this was the tool that I could help others become better communicators, which at the heart of all communications is this need to improve understanding. And if this can help human beings understand one another better, I think it's a force for good, and I'm excited about it.
So it's interesting. The takeaway from that, being an old newspaper writer myself, is teaching writing is frustrating, is what you said. And you want to rely on somebody else to do it. And whether that was a professor who did their job before they got to you, or whether it's AI now, you don't care, right?
Well, writing is really, I really believe that it takes hours and hours of practice to become a really skilled writer. You have to condition your neural pathways. I believe that. And those that want to go through that pain can do it. And I will say I had to do it because I was a freelance writer. I had to support my family. But most people don't want to subject themselves to that, and I can understand why. So, to me, this is kind of a tool like an architect can use a computer or a calculator instead of a slide rule, and this gives you command over that. I really analogize it to the first automobiles when the driver would wear goggles and gloves and smocks because he or she had to get out and fix the carburetor every so many miles. And I spent a lot of time fixing carburetors, which are words and syntax and grammar. And wow, it's pretty exciting to be able to really focus on the getting to a great destination instead of worrying about fiddling with the words and the syntax and the grammar and the carburetor.
Right. So you've been in PR for 3 decades plus. I've been with SHI in the kind of the reselling world for 25 years. Like in our industry, like there's always this latest development every 5 or 8 years, and we're like, well, this is the end of solution providers, or this is the end of the VAR, or whatever. And I'm thinking, all of the years that you've been in PR, like how many times has a new technology come out and it says, well, this is the end for PR firms, right? I mean, you've had to have seen this before.
Well, certainly. I mean, when major media became splintered, right? When the internet came along, and it used to be there were 3 different TV networks, and if you wanted to reach 90% of the American public, you would run one ad at 6:45 Eastern Standard Time, the same time on CBS, ABC, and NBC News, and you would reach 90%. And then it got splintered, and I was told, Your fate is sealed, Ed. You're done. I was told, you're done, Greg. You don't have these mass markets anymore. And in reality, it just created many more channels and many more user-generated opportunities. And then with blogging, I was told that's the end of you all, because that will carry the story. And why would we need PR firms if we can write it ourselves and publish it? And that just created more opportunities and more work for PR firms. So I think this is more disruptive, I think, than both of those. But I think I heard somebody say recently, it's going to free time, and it's up to us to determine how we want to fill that time. If we want to fill that time watching Netflix and playing video games, we can do it. But if we want to spend our time mastering new skills and adding to the creative base for our clients or our enterprises, I think that's going to be available to us too. And some of us will go that route. I know I'm excited to go that route and provide even more value.
Yeah, I'm still looking for that day when the PC was going to give us all, 8-hour work weeks and all that kind of stuff. But
yeah.
I'm sure it's right around the corner.
It never happened, Ed. I don't know.
In the press release for Write Release, which is itself an AI-powered press release tool, you were quoted as saying the following, quote, "The disruption is upon us. The risk to our industry, however, is that these AI tools will be developed by tech companies and not PR people." So first of all, can we assume you used AI to write that release? And did it come up with that catchy pullout quote?
Yes, I did. And I will tell you, the first time I used 2 years ago, at our annual meeting, a AI tool to write a news release, it hallucinated so much that it put in the news release that we had a mascot that was a frog, which it just made up. But even that, I saw opportunity in. And then when we got to the point where we could really master how you write news release using it, it was very disruptive. I think it is going to be a difference maker in how we do our jobs, not just from a content point of view, but also workflow, which I think is being overlooked right now, but we'll eventually get to in a big way.
What is your mascot, by the way?
It's I think it's a bearded communications professional for a technology reseller, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh man, there's tons of those. That's not a differentiator, I'm telling you.
I think it has to be a Rutgers grad too to actually qualify.
Okay, well, I'm out because I went to Stockton.
Okay,
so.
all right. All right.
All jokes aside, though, why do you feel it's important? Disruption in PR is done by PR people and not tech outsiders. Like, why do you want to disrupt yourself and not be disrupted by somebody else?
Well, Ed, we do have tech providers to us. They're called PRMs, public relations management systems, and they're so awkward, and they don't really fit the workflow of PR. Most of them are media databases, really not much more. And so it doesn't really fit the way we work. We tend to work across platforms. You'll be checking Twitter for a little bit to see what's breaking in the news, and then maybe you'll go to a database and find some media, and then maybe you'll go to Google. I mean, it's really hard to stay in one ecosystem as far as CRM for PR people. And that's not really seen by the tech providers. They're so focused on the way it's been done that they haven't really looked into the opportunities to bring us actual tools that increase our productivity and efficiency. Outside of content, really. They're not looking to the long game. And some of it's backwards in the way that it works for PR people. For instance, one creates a media pitch before it knows who the audience is. And that's exactly opposite of how communications work. I mean, the first thing you should do is know your audience. So I think it's more important that we as communicators figure out what works for us and put in place those skins and overlays with major AI engines that'll help us do our work more efficiently and increase the quality and the throughput for clients.
So I know you've been spotting this trend for a while now. I mean, you guys support technology companies, so you guys are always up on, what the latest and greatest is. But tell us when you started to take AI seriously, and then what you did about it.
Well, about 5 years ago, I started working with an AI company. I was really intrigued by it, and then we kind of all got distracted by crypto and blockchain, and that became the shiny new thing. But really, what excited me was 3 years ago when I started to work with a technologist and a engineer to try to figure out how to create tools that would allow us to really uncork our productivity, our content creation, and our brainstorming. So that's what I got really excited about it and really focused on it. And then I just started to consume everything I could on Twitter, basically, because there is no textbook or coursework for this about what was coming and how it was coming. And then when OpenAI released ChatGPT, it really, I think people need to understand there was just a whole alignment of the stars, right? We had enough bandwidth, we had enough processing power, and we had the algorithms that all came together at once. You know, the internet took much longer to adopt. And one of the reasons, when you're my age, you know why, because in 1998, it took about 3 minutes to download an MP3, right? And then you weren't sure if you were getting the right one because the music publishers were screwing with you, so you download it and it'd be a blaring trumpet the whole time, and you thought you were getting Queen, right? So there were real impediments to adoption that needed more bandwidth. But I think ChatGPT and Bard and Bing were released at a time when the infrastructure of technology was such that it was immediate. And I analogize it really to the first time you use a remote car door opener. Like, you're never not going to use it. It's just too available, too easy, and too understandable to give it up.
You said you were distracted by crypto and blockchain and maybe even lost some time to that. But blockchain's still, widely used and as popular as ever. But is it because for you, the AI has a bit more of a practical application than blockchain does?
Well, you're dead on. And I would say this, blockchain obviously has real long-term implications, and it's going to have long-term applications in AI when fakes can be made so easily, right? The authenticity on the blockchain is maybe going to become the linchpin to really have a user case, a really strong blockchain user case right there. But I think I always said, I think it's great. I think it's a phenomenal technology. I don't think I'm going to be writing my contracts on blockchain, right? On Ethereum. It's great. It's going to impact some markets dramatically, but it's not going to market all audiences. So yesterday I go home. My wife's a clinical dietitian. She's in private practice, and she's writing meal plans on ChatGPT for her clients. I mean, that's pretty insidious all of a sudden. I mean, when it's down to everybody, and my wife doesn't work in technology, and she's a therapist and a consultant on nutrition and diet. I mean, that really is a quick penetration.
But in that essence, she might be more of a moderator than a writer, right? Like, because she's taking all of this information from elsewhere that's coming, that's being built from millions of points of data, but she's still got to moderate that before it actually becomes practical in some way, right?
That's right. And for her, the heavy lift is on Google. If you go to find different recipes, it's all dictated by SEO. So if you look at a recipe on Google, whoever's authoring that will put a long story over top of it of how they got this recipe from their grandmother and is handed down, when really you just want to know how many eggs you're going to add, right? Like, can you eat eggs or not?
Right.
And so because of that, for her, Google has become very difficult to find effective nutrition information, and ChatGPT it delivers it in context, and I think that's an important conversation to have, because when you do research on, as you know, part of our business is financial services, and if you type in when can I retire, how much money do I need to retire, on Google, the first 5-6 hits are sponsored hits, which have you put in your personal information, and then it ends with we'll have an advisor call you. It's kind of like the Christmas story with drink your Ovaltine. You're like, damn, I didn't want this, right? And ChatGPT and Bing and Bard, they put it in context for you, and they do away with all that static friction, and they let you really focus on what the narrative is, and then you can be a moderator. You can be the oversight of the information, and that's part of what I see happening. We're going from an age of information to maybe an age of wisdom and intelligence, where we moderate these machine things in a way that are accurate and ethical and more approachable.
I know a few people. You mentioned ChatGPT a couple of times, and some of the reactions are mixed. And there's also people that have agendas. But as somebody who's really a proponent here, what have you learning? Like, what are some best practices, and maybe what are some big mistakes and misconceptions in day-to-day use?
Well, I use 3 engines. I use Bard, ChatGPT, and I use Bing. Bard I don't find as elegant in the final result as ChatGPT-4. One of the big things, I'll tell anybody that you need to pay the $20 an hour a month and get the premium, the plus, ChatGPT 4+, because it's so much better at reasoning than 3.5 is. And Bing is a good resource for finding the citations. When you do a prompt on Bing, it will actually list where it's getting the information, which allows you to go in and say, oh, this is the Wall Street Journal, and this is Joe's blog, so I'm going to give more credibility. So that's number one, pay the $20 a month. Secondly, really learn how to write prompts. A lot of people come back to me, and they say, what are you, a magician? You do this, and you make it look so easy. And when I look at their prompts, they're too generalized, and they get back very general high school or freshman college type essays instead of what they're looking for. And I've really worked with my staff to understand how to construct a prompt. I just came out of a session before this with one of our vice presidents, and some of the work he was showing me was mind-blowing, and he really focused on how you interface with the machine to get what you want. And he understands where you want to go, right? He understands what the end product was. So when he sets it up, he's always tilting it towards that. And he'll push the machine. He'll come back and he'll say, do better, or include these stats now, or cut paragraph 2 and replace it with this thought. So, getting used to doing it. And for me, it was always a joy. I mean, this is like playing a video game for me. I'll spend a Sunday morning lost in generative AI, just seeing what crazy things I can produce, because studies show that 65% of us believe that we have more creativity than we can express. And I'm certainly in that crowd. And so some of the generative AI, it really provides us a safe place to try ideas where, you're not going to have Kevin from Shark Tank, Mr. Wonderful, voting you down. and you're going to be able to experiment, and you're going to be able to loosen your mind and create great ideas.
that other 35%, I just don't even want to meet those people, to be honest with you. I mean, come on, they know it all already,
I guess, or maybe like Spielberg has done like I'm done. I've gotten all my ideas out there. I'm just gonna like lay on a beach. Who knows?
The rare exception, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, how have you managed to build AI into the culture and processes at Gregory FCA? I mean, are your writers competing with AI now instead of each other? Is that a nice break from the norm?
Well, one of the things, and I think it's important, is that it came from the top, right? It's really hard to do this from the bottom up. This isn't, I don't know if you remember this craze, Ed, the bring your device to work. A couple years ago, 10 years ago,
right,
when smartphones and social media, if you allow young people to bring generative AI into the workplace without a lot of schooling and training, there's risk involved with that. So with myself, I have taken it on the mantle of being the so-called internal expert on generative AI, to write the policy and then to socialize it within the firm and to do the training. Right now I'm going back to every vice president. So now what are you doing with it? And some of them say, I haven't gotten to it yet. I'm saying, no, that's an issue we got to work on. And then some of them are coming forth with unbelievable approaches. And then I'm sharing with everybody within the firm things that we're all learning together and putting it all together, which really opens up people's minds. When they see how somebody who does their exact same job, maybe in a different vertical, is using it, for instance, to create a blog post or to create a media pitch or to create a haiku. Yesterday, we represent one of the country's leading behavioral health centers, and they were competing to win their social media, and we came up with a series of haikus that could be almost memes about helping potential patients, and they were spectacular. And when people see that to be created in an exchange with a machine, it's pretty eye-opening.
How receptive have your clients been? Do you think any of them have been turned off, or worse, do they say, well, what do I need you guys for if I have the access to this same tool? Do they understand all that goes into it?
I think there's going to be some who master it, and to them, if you can do it better than me, you should be doing it, right?
Right.
But I think for the most part, it's going to be a unique skill set, and they're going to be reliant on people who can actually perform the magic with the prompts. And then there's going to be an expectation of more throughput and more creativity and originality, which will really drive demand for it. So, in fact, we're going, any new client, we've included a new clause in our contracts, and to date we've had absolutely no objections at all to that clause, where we tell them we use ChatGPT. This is or generative AI. This is the steps we take to assure copyright, originality, security, and if you don't want us to use it, we won't. But you have to tell us.
Yeah, we have a project internally where we're trying to take some of the knowledge that's accumulated on software volume licensing and IT asset management, and luckily I don't have nearly as competitive a field as you guys are dealing with, because I don't know how many people are going to be pouring the 10,000 hours into that. So I think we're good there. But from a long-term trends perspective, we talked about like blockchain, which you evaluated and then decided, hey, like it's got great uses for everybody else. But is there a chance that all this is extremely overhyped? Are these Gen AI tools the next NFT or the or something that was kind of like very recently in the conversation and then not discussed anymore?
To the contrary, I think it's going to be adapted and adopted very widely. I think it's going to really change a lot of the ways we work. And I think it's not being overhyped. It could be underhyped, right? I mean, how could you overhype the internet?
Right.
And I see that to be the same thing here. In all, I think it's going to radically change a lot of how we do things and the way we approach things. And I think I've been talking a lot about the LeBron syndrome, right? That it could lead to 20% of us generate 80% of all opportunity, and the 20% will know how to use this tool. I was asked by a reporter yesterday, how would you explain what these are, what generative AI is? And I said, imagine you have 5 interns, and each one of them has a different skill set. Like, one is your creative person. I mean, he's just a 21-year-old ball of energy with lots of ideas. The other is your research associate, and she's got like an MBA, and she's your intern, and she's going to go out and she's going to pull out incredible little facts, right? The next is your visual intern, and he or she can create unbelievable images using ChatGPT. And the next one is your brainstorming genius, and they know how to use ChatGPT in a group setting or generative AI in a way to pull out and make disparate connections that you would never imagine.
Right.
And you'll turn to each of them for different things. And I think that's what it's going to be in the future. These will be personal productivity assistants, and those who really want to live in this world will have a chance to emerge as LeBrons, the 20% who see 80% of all opportunity.
And in terms of who's going to live in this world, as you said, you gave some advice on LinkedIn recently, and you said, don't hire a prompt engineer, hire an English major. What do you mean by that?
I mean, for the content side, if you understand the basics of communication, if you understand that you need to explain who the audience is, you need to meet an audience where they live, even down to the type of buzzwords you use, cliches. I mean, it's appropriate to use cliches or buzzwords in technology because that's a shorthand and it economizes understanding. People know what this means.
We wouldn't be able to speak otherwise. It's
That's
how we
right.
communicate with one another.
That's right. So you have to, if you understand that, and you understand how to take that car, that the real initiative here is to get to a great vacation and not fix the carburetor. And sometimes when you say engineer, they're down there fixing the carburetors.
Right.
And what an English major might be able to do better, and I just walked out of a meeting that confirmed this, is actually drive the machine and get it to where you want to get it, and to have unique thoughts and interesting conversations, and to really achieve the end goal of all communications, which is spur understanding among people.
Yeah, and from a comms perspective, I mean, we're all just kind of post Shakespeare. We're kind of recreating some things, but it's those original connections that haven't been made before for a long time is probably going to require some human interaction. I mean, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I do. And then it does some amazing things, and I'll give you a quick little anecdote. Before it clamped down on using generative AI engines to do tests, I did run it through a test, and it's called, I think, the disassociate task test or something like that. And what it is 10 words that you have 4 minutes to give 10 words that are unrelated, that they don't appear often together in the English language. Now,
Wow.
if you think about this, it's opposite of what you believe this algorithm does. What the algorithms do is come up with words that appear close to each other often, word clusters, tokens, as they call them in the world of generative AI. So I wanted to see how, and this is supposed to be a measure of creativity. So if you write word number 1, strawberry, word number 2, anchor, well, they don't appear often together. But if 3, you include farm, well, you lose because strawberries are grown on farms, right? So you have to remember as you go through this. The average human being scores 86 on that, and ChatGPT scored 76. The average human being scores 76. ChatGPT scored 87, I believe, on that test. And it was so that shows you it has the ability to bring disparate thoughts and bring them together. And I've tried this. I gave it a task. I gave it a task to come up with a new product based on retirement planning and virtual reality goggles. And it came up with something called V-tirement. Experience your retirement today through a virtual experience. And it actually gave me the marketing pitches for that product. Now, that's pretty exciting, right? And that's something that maybe somebody could get to, but maybe not, right?
those words you were putting together, it sounds like, Robin Williams' free association routines up there. I mean, he's probably the only one that scored higher on that test you were talking about.
That's true. That's true.
And then I just two more questions for you. What are the biggest ways you see Gen AI impacting careers of people who, are already, like aren't just, new on the scene and have been in position for, 10, 15, 20 plus years, which I know a lot of your staff has, so it's, I think we generally, for whatever reason, I tend to think younger when I'm thinking about getting writers, up in helping them with this tool. But what does that mean to the talent pool in the kind of in mid career and mid kind of talent pool there? How are they particularly going to be affected by this?
Well, it's an interesting question, right? And some studies say those jobs that are going to be most impacted are the ones that are highest paid, best educated, and most creative. That sounds like PR to me, right? So this is the message I give to everyone. Look, we're in a race, and we have to adopt these new technologies. We got to come out on the 20%, seeing 80% of the opportunities. We need to work together to gain these skills. And I'm not just saying this to get ahead here at GregoryFCA. I would love all of you to work here for the rest of your lives, but I want to make a more productive career for you. And this is the best tool I have seen since the internet to make a more productive career for you. And I can do more for you to achieve your career goals, working together to master these tools than anything I've ever seen. And my greatest gift to you would be to help you become a more thoughtful communicator, something I didn't have within me 6 months ago before it was launched. So I'm going to do everything in my power as somebody who has been here a long time to help them, open their minds and see this and really use it, not just as a content tool, but also as a workflow tool, and then an ideation and brainstorming engine, right? And then it's going to help them because the younger people, the work that they do will be at a higher quality all of a sudden. So they won't have to be fixing the carburetor every day. They'll be having discussions like, this is good, but it needs more facts, or this is good, but it misses the audience a little bit. Let's go back and really try to figure out who the audience is. So that's going to make their life more enjoyable because, man, writing is a grind, and creating content is a grind, and getting turned down by the media is a grind, right? And so I think the people who have accepted it most are some of my most skilled writers because they're like me. They giggle when they see it produce good content because it's something they thought they know how hard it is to do, how really hard it is to create that. So in many ways, I think for the top, it's going to make their job a more joyful experience. It's going to allow the mid-level to produce at a much higher level, which will make that manager's job more joyful because you're going to get higher quality content and work product that you don't have to constantly be tinkering with. And at the lowest level, I do worry about that. I worry about young kids coming into it, and if they don't take the time to really learn what the basic pillars of communication are, they may never know how to get to that vacation spot, right? They may never know what good is. So I don't know how to figure that one out, but I do know that driving the bus on the top level can make for, I think, a career that's more satisfying and fulfilling. So, as I go through my conversations with all my vice presidents and they show me some of the things they do, Ed, it is incredibly rewarding to see them produce at such a high level all of a sudden. I mean, you could, in essence, talk like an MBA if you wanted to by simply using it to take concepts that are reserved for, MBA school and applying them in the world of communications. And I've done that over and over again. I did a process where I had the machine apply empathetic design. Before I started, I did not know what that meant, right? Mm-hmm. It's an MBA kind of term on a new product rollout, and it was masterful. I had to do a SWOT analysis for a client, and it was masterful. So, if you can gain those kinds of new insights, I don't know, if you're into learning and you have an inquisitive mind, this could be, this feeds it forever, I believe.
And before you go, can't let you out of here without asking this question, especially somebody who's been in PR for a couple decades now. How much do the reference materials matter in terms or are they? And the reason I asked that, you mentioned Wall Street Journal earlier. Like, I've been reading the New York Times since I was capable of reading the New York Times and a few others. Are they going to matter more or less because of where this information is pulled from? In theory, there's been some cases where AI has actually, written research papers and then made up the works cited page. Like the authors and the titles don't even exist. Is this going to make the Gray Lady and the Wall Street Journal? Is this going to make them even more important?
I think it could. I think when they train new models, right? I think there's going to be some sort of licensing opportunity that they're going to enter into that will solve some of these issues. That the New York Times will see revenue from the retraining of this, which would help that it's coming from the New York Times instead of comments on Twitter, right?
Right.
That's a much more reliable kind of source. I think, though, it's always going to be up to the human to check the reliability and verify the accuracy of the information that comes in. And the more you can create really thoughtful prompts, the more you can assure. It hallucinates when it starts to guess, right? When it relies solely on its algorithm. And I'll give you a quick example. Until recently, ChatGPT, I've not yet gotten the plugin that allows it to see the internet, so I can't speak to that. I wish I could. I feel like I'm being denied. But if you were to put in the Silicon Valley Bank collapse, it says, I don't know anything about that, right? I only know till October of 2021. So if then you put in to ChatGPT that Silicon Valley Bank did collapse, right, it will spit out that it collapsed because of bad loans. And it hallucinated that. That's not why it collapsed. It was a unicorn event. But every one of its algorithms associate bank collapses with bad loans, not with failure to hedge long-term bonds, right? It doesn't. That's a new phenomenon, or a more rare phenomenon. So it can easily slip by you. You can easily take it for granted when you see that. It's so affirmative, and it's written so well that you think that's the case. Now, those are going to be solved, right, when this is connected, ChatGPT and Bard is connected to the internet and Bing is connected to the internet. But still, I mean, look, if you're producing content and writing and you rely on Google alone, you need to check every reference there anyway, right? You need to check every opportunity to come up with the most valid source. So in some ways, it really shouldn't change our workflow much when it comes to accuracy and authenticity. So,
Greg, I just wanted to say thanks again for your time. Where can people find you online and learn more? Which is pretty much your entire job, actually.
Yeah, you can find me anywhere. My name, it's Greg Matusky. I'm all over the internet. GregoryFCA.com. I'm listed there, www.GregoryFCA.com. Please, my LinkedIn page, I'm constantly publishing information that I think is interesting about AI. Some of it's crazy. This week, every time I hear AI, I think of Allen Iverson kind of thing. And it's
you are based in Ardmore, Pennsylvania. Am I
right
right?
Outside of Philadelphia. We have offices in New York. So, and I was always a big AI fan from Allen Iverson.
I hear. Well, Greg, president and founder of GregoryFCA, really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. It was fun, Ed.